Welcome back, everyone, to Zero Gravity. It's been a while since we brought you a live show, and we're getting started a few minutes late, so you didn't see our lovely countdown timer. You just get our beautiful faces right at the beginning. So, Sterling, Ryan, welcome back to the show. How have you guys been?
I've been great. You kidding me? We've been ripping and running, just heading around the country, the hands-on labs. We've had an awesome time at the V100 sponsoring it and just doing what we do best. How you been, Ryan?
I've been great as well. I mean, just living the life, solving repository issues for one Veeam customer at a time. So, yeah, great to be back on. It has been, I think, a longer while for me. So glad to be here.
Yeah, we're always happy to have you, Ryan. It always makes for a good conversation between the Apple iOS side of me and you two ganging up on me with the Microsoft Android side. So that always makes for a fun dialogue. Couple quick housekeeping notes. We'd love to make this as interactive as possible. So if you guys have any questions throughout the show, please drop those in whatever chat box you have there on YouTube, and we'll definitely pick those questions up. We'd love to hear where you're watching as well. So please drop us a note. Just say where you're watching geographically across the world. It's always cool to see where people are tuning in from. And we actually have a really special guest joining us today. And I want to go ahead and toggle his video on and introduce him, Mr. Chris Childerhose. Thanks for joining us. Here you are live and in person. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you, Matt. Nice to be here.
Absolutely. I think last time you and I saw each other, Chris, it was over in Prague for the Veeam 100 last year. So what's been going on these past couple of years?
Not a heck of a lot. Published a book. Well, what was it, last year?
Oh.
Looking at doing a fourth book now. So trying to get some ideas put together for a security related book and everything.
I'm sorry.
Like that.
Did you just say fourth book?
Yep.
So you just
Fourth
finished your fourth? Jeez, man.
No. This one that I'm doing will be my fourth. I've done 3 already. So
holy cow, man!
Oh, look at Ryan's got
I have,
it.
well, I,
There you
I
go.
have a copy
There you
of one
go.
of them. I don't know which one this is, but
that's version 12. That's the latest one.
Pretty sweet.
That's
I'll plug
awesome.
it for you there, Chris.
Thanks. Go buy my book, people, please.
That's fantastic, man. Hey, so Chris, I was going to ask you too. So what's it been like being part of the Object First Aces community, just to put you on the spot?
It's actually been really good. It's been a slow start. I hear we're close to having a logo and getting some swag now and those kinds of things. It's been nice. I've actually been able to get a hold of an appliance to do some testing, which is in one of our data centers. I've been doing some benchmarking and a bunch of things with that. I also have something that we're going to talk about today. I won't give it away right now and whatnot in my home lab. So we'll see how it goes.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah. Normally what we do in the show is just kind of go around the horn and let each of us kind of point out something really cool they got in their office. I'll go first. We were on the topic of, last week we visited our friends at the Mirazon office up in Louisville, Kentucky, where Sterling and Ryan and myself, we kind of all hosted a hands-on lab for a group of clients, and really cool swag that was provided. Shout out to Casey for providing some awesome swag bags for that group. And I may or may not have stolen some of these really cool coasters, and I now have this on my desk, and it's like for lack of a better word, it feels like a piece of slate. It's like black metal. I don't know if you can hear that in the mic, but it's a really, really cool coaster. And there was a set of these. So now I have upgraded my home office coaster. I know it's a riveting topic and it's a cool piece of tech, right? Being a coaster, but it's all I had right in front of me. So how about you guys? There's bound to be something more interesting.
I think that's pretty awesome. The best part about that, Matt, is that it was made by one of our fellow teammates.
Yeah.
So it was actually made by Justin Gilbert and then actually sent out. Now, he also sent out, I believe he sent out some smokers as well, right? I missed that. So I got to get on one of those.
I definitely have one of those.
They look super cool. They look super cool. So I'll just, I'll go really quickly. And one of them, I actually have 2 quick things. One of them is more for Chris, and then one of them is more for the group, something cool. And it was really just because when we were together in Berlin a couple of weeks ago, it really got me thinking about Veeam. It got me thinking about the Veeam community and really how Veeam has changed all over the years. In fact, Matt, we were talking this morning that one of the old slogans used to be virtualization is for lovers, right? So we were kind of going over the back. All of this stuff started kicking off the V100's Vanguards, who are the best of Veeam users, of which Chris is one. They were all given these really cool trophies. And, you know, Veeam has always been sort of on the forefront of like really cool things and giveaways. So I started digging through one of my old bags here. And I found something pretty cool. Oh, wait, is that the trophy? Pause right there. You gotta get a look at this trophy, guys. It is second to none.
Your virtual background's trying to eat it. Maybe go closer to the camera.
It is, yeah.
Oh,
Now,
wow, yeah.
How many years, Chris, have you been a V100 Veeam Vanguard?
My first year was 2018.
Nice. That was
got
back in, was that the 9.5
Well,
era?
no, this new trophy actually is just 23, 24. I have an older trophy which is made out of glass and has glass sliders that go on it.
I've seen
And
that
that goes from 2018 to 2022.
That's cool. Every year they do this. They iterate with a new and something even cooler and better. And you know, Veeam has kind of done this with their swag over the years. So I have something to share today. And it was one of the coolest little things. It's nothing major, but one of the years that we really talked about how awesome the Veeam backup and replication was and how fast it was, we came out with these custom mice. Now this is orange, this is green. It's actually not orange, but I have the background on, so it's tough to see right now. I wonder if I can quickly flip.
It's
I don't
a
think I
chameleon,
can.
man. It's changing
Hold on.
color everywhere.
It's going
Hold on,
orange to purple.
Let me flip. There we go.
There you
so
go.
now you see my
There you
green. and it's cool because
Nice.
it literally says Veeam. It just works on there. So just kind of looking back in the archive, I have some other cool things like this. This is a mouse, y'all. A mouse.
Where was I at when they were giving those away? Somehow I missed. I've got fishing lures. I've got some really wild Veeam swag, but I do not have the car mouse.
That
That's
was
awesome.
one of my favorite ones. That was one of my favorite ones for a while. Now, my cool thing that I just want to share with anybody else out there, if you want to get yourself one of these, who has a whole bunch of VCR tapes that they still have at their house? But to have a VCR tape, you still have to have a VCR player and the player hooked up to your TV, and you know they're not HDMI, most of them. So, you know, what we have here is a nice little converter. It takes your VCR tapes, converts them into digital. You can rip it on over there so you can see the back actually connects into your VCR tapes.
Wow.
This connects into your USB. And then in the front, you just connect that up and you start ripping VCR tapes. I have done it for a ton of my old high school wrestling tapes, and I'm sending them out to friends so they can actually view themselves wrestling as well. It's pretty awesome. So this is my thing I'm sharing.
Only the ones where you won, right, Sterling?
Forget, if I lost, I don't even know where those tapes are.
Those went missing. Sorry, it ate them. That's super. You know, it's super cool to think about tech too. We were joking, I think, just last week about Winamp. You know, those that remember like Media Player, but even before that, like Winamp, and that's the way you used to, you know, rock your MP3s. I look at it like I remember Betamax, but I only had a few of those, and certainly VHS tapes. That was the thing, you know, when I was growing up. And then you move to the whole DVD, and then rewritable DVDs, then Blu-ray, and I feel like that was such a quick blip on the radar to go from magnetic tape to, let's just say, CDs in general, and now everything's digital, and it just was in and it's gone, you know. And I think Blu-rays are kind of hanging on for those folks that need like the super duper high bit rate for their crazy 8K TVs, but it's such a small use case these days.
Agreed.
Yeah, I mean, I almost feel bad saying that I don't even have a DVD player to play any of
don't
the
either.
DVDs I have.
I don't either.
And it's...
I don't
know,
either.
yeah.
Like, I remember back when Netflix would let you actually rent the DVD.
Oh, yeah.
They'd ship it to you in the sleeve, and you chip it back. And yeah, I don't think I have a single. To your point, Ryan, I don't think I have a single thing in the house that plays a disc. Sadly enough.
I do still.
Do you?
But I have a Blu-ray player, but I have to have it because I have A Christmas Story on Blu-ray.
Oh, yeah.
Which is a yearly tradition, and it's like the best viewing is on the Blu-ray that I have.
I was about to say, lucky for you, Chris, they play it on loop every day of your life in December.
Yeah.
On like 4 channels.
So true.
Yep.
So true.
Oh my gosh, you brought that up, and I feel like we saw a package last week too in the Mirazon office. It had fragile on the side, and I immediately taken back to that.
That's
Well, guys, what do you say we kind of get into the topic? Unless you have something really cool, Chris, you want to show from your side.
I have one thing here. Now, this was given out at the V100 Summit
Oh yeah,
to all of the attendees. You guys were one of the sponsors. Wasabi was the other sponsor, but power banks.
Oh, look at that.
super
missed
cool.
Power banks. Now, I actually have 2 of them. Somehow I managed to snag a second one.
I'm somehow
whatnot,
like, okay,
but
we
I don't go anywhere without these coming in
Yep.
my backpack with me. So
we need to talk about upgrading the swag here internally because
yeah.
I could have used one of those. I've got a little white one, but it's only, I don't know how many milliamp it is, but it's not enough. It's basically enough to recharge the phone once, and it's totally
These-
dead. And that thing
these
looks
are
like you
what-
could hit a
these-
laptop.
Oh, those things are
these
big.
are 20,000.
Oh,
Yeah.
nice.
I have an extra one for the right price. You can have it.
Probably costs more to ship it than it would
Object
for that.
First branded. That's
Yeah,
right.
exactly.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, guys, the topic of today's show is all about the VSA. And, for those that aren't familiar, virtual SAN appliance, it's basically, for lack of a better word, it's essentially a VM, that you can drop out in your virtualization environment to test things, right? To test storage tech. And Ryan, why don't you share with us a bit, maybe about how the Object First VSA came to be?
Definitely, as we've progressed as storage solution, right, on-premise hardware, it's hard to get that to multiple people for trial purposes, POCs, for our partner community to test, right, such as Chris has been doing for a while, within their data center. So it was always asked, right, of partners and customers about a VSA. And I think we were hesitant at first of having something to deploy as a VSA, because I think the biggest point to understand is it is not immutable, right? It is a virtual machine. Now within, you can make immutable backups with the S3 API that we're built off of, but you can just delete that VM, and immutability really doesn't matter at that point. So that's why one reason we were hesitant of releasing one at first. And really, so far, we've been in a small, very subset of users. In our ecosystem, especially Veeam, the Veeam SE team across the globe. There's been plenty of testers there, as well as our partner community. As Chris already mentioned, he's got his hands on one as well, the Object First Aces. Also, anybody that has requested one has, and we are slowly getting to a point where it might be more readily available in the future. Maybe off our website. Only time will tell. But we do have a program. But if you are interested more as a customer, get with your sales engineer or your sales team over here at Object First, and we can have a discussion on maybe getting that in there. But it's just a little bit more flexible way of testing, getting hands-on. Now, you can't necessarily compare apples to apples, the VSA to the hardware appliance. And maybe, Chris has some thoughts on that, as he has tested with both, but I think most people can assume hardware versus a VSA a little bit different.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the hardware one it's 10 gig. So my home lab, I don't have 10 gig. I can't test great throughput and stuff like that, but it's a nice way to get, as you said, hands-on with it, work with it, set it up. And it is truly as easy as you guys promote it to be, to get going. I started off with one of them. I now have 3 because I was able to get a cluster license and everything. So it's not a lot of storage. It's 1 terabyte per appliance. I have 3 terabytes, but even still, it lets me see how it interacts with Veeam, how to connect it, how to do stuff with Veeam. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Chris, do you have the ability to share your setup and kind of walk us through how you have it deployed, just from a visual perspective?
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
While he's doing that, Ryan, can you walk us through how you spell VSA?
Sure can. VSA. No. We'll let Chris go now that he has it up. Yep. screen.
So this
That's
so
fun.
this is so this here's the dashboard. This is the overview of everything. It tells you how much storage you have, how much is used. Here's my service point. Yes, I have a home network of 192.168. But it tells me how many nodes I've got, how many disks, networks, S3 buckets, everything like that here on this page. I can go to monitoring. I don't know if my backup is still running. Yeah, no, it looks like my backup finished. But as you can see here, I was gauging how fast and stuff. I'm not getting great read-write rates. I see more than this with the appliance that I have in my data center, but you can at least see here that it's writing at a fairly decent rate to back up my VMs and stuff like that. So, and then here we go. So here's my nodes. As you can see, it's on VMware. Now, as it was shared, these aren't immutable. However, I do have my VMs on a Synology NAS, and it's on iSCSI, and I actually take snapshots and make those snapshots immutable. So if by chance somebody did get into my network, I could always revert the snapshot of my iSCSI LUN and bring these back and whatnot. But I know it's not the immutable feature that everybody wants to see, which the appliance is, right?
Yeah, and that's a very good point, right, Ryan? I mean, this really shows the interoperability, how it works in the environment, how it's going to interact with Veeam backup and replication. But this is a little bit different than the actual physical box itself, right?
It is. I mean, a couple other things to make note of, especially with it being virtual, it really depends on a lot of the underlying, ESXi hardware. It's really only been tested as far as the OVA into ESXi 6.5 higher workstation fusion, workstation player, all on Intel hardware is really and truly where it's been tested. I actually have it on an AMD proc, so on my workstation pro, so it does work there. But it is a little bit lighter from a hardware perspective. 4 cores, 8 gigs of RAM is what you would have with the virtual appliance itself. And then, as Chris mentioned, it is 1 terabyte per appliance. So that is going to be a difference from a consumption. Again, we don't want this used as a production type scenario. It's virtual, right? It can be deleted very, very easily. And then the other big difference between the hardware and the software is that right out of the download, I'm going to say not box, but the VSA only has 1 NIC associated with the VM. And if you've seen any demos or seen any videos on the hardware appliance, there are 2 networking options. There's a SFP Plus card, there's the onboard base T, but both of those are dual port. However, so you only get 1 single virtual NIC with the VSA. However, you can edit the virtual machine configuration and actually add in a second virtual NIC, and that way you can show some of the load balancing features that take place on a single node. So, just some of another difference that you would see between the hardware versus the virtual appliance.
Something interesting I need to try now. Add another NIC. Never even thought about that.
So, Chris, I'm curious, just from your perspective, like how was your experience deploying this versus, say, the physical, appliance?
It was about the same, honestly. The physical appliance took me under 30 minutes to deploy in my data center. Now I had help with running cables and all those kinds of things, but and then this was maybe, I don't know, 15 minutes per VSA appliance that I deployed. The first one took slightly longer because that's the one that you set up the IP on, and then the actual VIP that's used when you connect to it and stuff like that. But then the second and the third nodes, it's just like, okay, yeah, join a cluster. Okay, here's the IP of this one. Go. So. But yeah, I've created 2 buckets on here. One is unversioned, one is versioned. So one is not immutable, one is immutable. I just wanted to test the difference between the 2 to see and all those kinds of things. I've got 1 S3 key. I got 1 user. That's my administrator. One thing I'd like to see you guys do is when you create a key, be able to assign it to a user, not the user that's logged into the web UI.
Mm-hmm.
So if I created another user for, say, specifically for Veeam, and I create a key, I don't want it to go to the root user. I want it to go to the Veeam user that I have sitting there, kind of thing. But some feedback that I've already given to you guys. Then there's alerts, events, and everything like that. That's basically it. It's very simple. I can take you into the settings here. This is where you would do the cluster update, where I can check for my updates, see if there's anything new yet. There wasn't this morning when I last checked, and stuff. This also lets you put devices into maintenance or reboot them, shut them down.
Hey Chris, I'm curious from a multi-node setup. So we do have a couple nodes in our production demo lab, but they're really earmarked for specific use cases. And since you've got the VSA with a couple nodes, can you just talk about your experiences in the past when it comes time to scale or grow storage from a capacity perspective versus simply just adding another Ootbi node into your existing cluster? Because that's one of the things that impressed me the most is, you think about old school, growing a RAID set or pool and things like that is not exactly easy. But if you just add another Ootbi node into your cluster, it's just a few steps, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's simple. Same thing with even the physical appliances. You add another one, join the cluster, and then it adds it in there and consolidates everything together to expand your storage.
Mm-hmm.
Storage is a big thing with me, with Veeam and capacity management and all those kinds of things, especially on block storage. It's such a pain to plan, expand, manage. You're always running out, depending on what service you're using with Veeam. Like VCC is a big capacity management issue that we have. So we're looking to move to S3 storage and all those kinds of things. So.
Yep. Yeah, that was something that, kind of rang true because in the past when I've worked with storage, it's not 3 clicks and you've now grown the pool, right? I mean, even if you're using a scale out repo in Veeam, there's still more clicks than that. You've got to set up the storage on the back end before you can add it as an extent to grow the sober. So when you just look at just ease of scalability, I really think the VSA is a good way to illuminate that, where yes, it's not immutable. Yes, we don't recommend that for production environments, of course, because it's not hardened, but to see the simplicity and the scalability, and even something like removing a node from a cluster, you can do that in just a couple clicks and it evacuates. Assuming you have enough free capacity on the remaining 2 nodes, everything is automated.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, I think it allows for just a lot of the hands-on what you would be day to day inside the web UI, right? Because that is exactly the same between both the VSA and the physical hardware. It also allows you to do some of the additional testing as well. And Chris, not sure if you dove into any AWS CLI, with anything with roles or anything like that, but you have that ability as well because we are S3 API, so it does allow today some of that locking down of creating IAM user and specific keys and such. So hopefully, again, we'll make some of that in the future as well. So,
hopefully at some point I'll get into that stuff, but the CLI stuff can stay over there for now.
I hear you.
It's not my forte. So
yeah. Well, one thing that really always sticks out to me, certainly as we do these sort of hands-on labs, really kind of across the country and then of course globally, is people's comments when they set up, first of all, the text user interface, and we just kind of do just a few things. Then when they go into the graphical user interface, how easy it is to use and how succinct. There isn't a whole bunch of what I would call fluff there, a whole bunch of sort of pointless buttons and knobs. And one of those main reasons are because we leverage Veeam for most of that goodness. So there isn't that encryption to turn on. There isn't that, box replication. There isn't that. We're using the best of the best to make sure that the data streams going into those nodes are really succinct and to the point, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I think I would agree with you, Sterling, especially just coming off the hands-on lab last week. It's you see a lot of people. In fact, you interviewed a guy where he was like, everything should be this simple. The problem is everybody's simple until they're not. And when you actually get hands on with some of this tech and you see it, it takes me back, you know, Ryan and Sterling and Chris, if you were using Veeam back in the day, it takes me back to when Veeam first introduced instant VM recovery way back, either 6 or 5.5 or whatever version it was. But it was over a decade ago. And we were all like, that doesn't work. That smoke and mirrors, right? There's got to be some, you know, voodoo going on. And sure enough, when you saw it in action and actually saw what was happening, it was like the light bulbs, right? Like, whoa, that is incredible. And that's essentially what we're doing with some of this tech.
Yeah. And you know what's interesting is I had a customer that was at our lab last week in Kentucky, and they were saying, you know, this is easy. This just works. Your environment, meaning the environments that we all live in, that's where the complexity lies. And so it's not that it's all just easy and it just put it together. It's just this isn't adding another bit of complexity to what you already have going on in your environment. We still think that you should work with the best of the best partners to make sure that your infrastructure is set up correctly and that you have the right set of circumstances before you put these boxes in or anything else. But this box in itself doesn't add any of that complexity, and that's the part that I really continually pick up from the customers themselves.
Yeah, it's just very simple to me, anyway.
Yeah, I had a quick question for you, Chris, if you don't mind. Did you start with your single node that you had originally and just swap out the key for then adding the cluster nodes? Or did you?
Yes,
Yes,
I did. Yeah, I did. No, I had the single node. I started out with, I had the original key that you guys had sent me. And then once I got the next key that let me do the cluster, I swapped the key. It worked. And then I just deployed 2 more nodes after that and just joined them to the cluster.
Awesome. Did you notice how long it took to potentially load balance out, you know, between the clusters, or is that something you just kind of let it do and just see?
I let it do it. It took a while in my environment. It's not the greatest home lab. I got like 4 Intel NUCs here that they're old. They're and whatnot. But it did take a little bit because I was constantly getting warnings about redistribution or can't get this information in the web UI. And I'm like, okay, I'll just leave it. And then eventually I went in there. I'm like, oh, look at that. All the storage is almost the same across all 3 of them. So it's like, okay, it must have did it in the background.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the good things is you know, with you know, even from a real world perspective, somebody starting with a single node, right? They're able to just add a second down the road and it just load balance. There's nothing that they have to do. And it does it just based on capacity. So I just wanted to hear your thoughts on what that looked like, you know, from the VSA perspective.
Yeah, no, it was good.
Yeah, and you know, Ryan, like, you know, piggybacking on that a bit, one of the things that was one of my early questions, you know, when I first joined is how chatty this was on essentially the backplane or the back end. And one of the things that maybe you can talk to this a bit more, but when you have more than one node in a cluster, it's not like load balancing at the cluster level happens every single time a job runs. It has certain algorithms and certain thresholds that have to be met before Object First is going to adjust the cluster or rebalance the cluster. And that way you're not having unnecessary network traffic, you know, to move stuff around if it's fairly even, right?
Yep. Yeah, it all goes back to the API from Veeam, right? The Smart Object Storage API. They've broken up a lot of the objects coming in as smart entities. So we're able to use the smart entity tag of saying, hey, move this one from node 1 to node 2, node 2 to node 3, and that helps with that load balancing. But it's also not going to try to say, hey, you have you know, the 50 terabytes of data, say for a hardware appliance, and you add another one in. Let's take 25 and ship it over. Right? It's going to do small chunks of those smart entities at a time. A, because there's everything else on the network, but B, you know, Veeam does eventually need to run some backup jobs. So we're going to alleviate. And then if something is being moved, it finishes up, but it won't initiate anything if it recognizes there is Veeam jobs running. So,
right. You know, and one other thing, I want to throw up a QR code that that we have a white paper around Zero Trust. You know, we talked about this a lot, and I really want to get your take on this, Chris, and sorry to put you on the spot on this, but like when you look at solutions in the space and we talk about Zero Trust and further Zero Trust data resilience that Veeam and Numberline kind of work together to build, like one of the things that I feel like people don't really realize is when we talk about being simple and secure, yes, we're powerful, but simple and secure, those two pillars to me working in concert with each other, like it does with Ootbi, is really tough to rival, because when the box ships, it's already hardened. You don't have any access to root. There's no CLI that you can get in there and do anything on, but it's also pre-provisioned that way. So you kind of look at it from a security perspective. Out of the box immutability, you've got versioning enabled by default, but also from a physical hardening standpoint of the operating system, we also kept that simple to stay in alignment with these ZTDR best practices. But I would love to just hear your take on what your thoughts are for the physical appliance with regards to security.
Well, it's great. You know what? It's great. We're security first here. So a lot of stuff that I do with Veeam, designs, architecture, all of that stuff, I think of security at the top versus somewhere in the middle or at the bottom, which a lot of people don't like to think about. So with this appliance, and the way I've explained it to my team and my boss, is it's hardened. So it's very similar to how Veeam is now coming out with their ISO file, which I'm also testing as well, where they harden it. You can't do this, you can't do that. You can only do certain things within the UI, and that's it.
Agreed. And I think one of the things that really sticks out to me, Matt's already kind of said this, but this is usually the trumpet that I'm horning on here is the fact that it's the simplicity part of it. The really cool thing about Veeam, of course, is its flexibility. You can add anything you want into the different types of architectures, whether it's direct attached storage, not recommended today, or a dedupe, not really recommended today, or any of the hardened repositories. You can certainly build one yourself. It's the idea that we have many admins that are not security experts, but they need that utmost security in their environment. This is a great way to adopt that. One that you may not have to spend a ton of hours building yourself, or even if you have an ISO that's ripped, things that you're taking care of it, updates, the things like that you just don't want to have to worry about, or better yet, don't want to be culpable for in terms of some new laws here in the US. This is just a great way to adopt that higher end security and keeping it simple. I mean, to me, that's what usability is really all about.
Yeah, I think you're right, Sterling. And I kind of look at it like, Ootbi basically enables people to have security expertise without being security experts. And to me, that's a feature in and of itself, almost like a ancillary, oh, by the way, feature, just by the way that we design the appliance. And I think it's oftentimes underemphasized with how significant that really is, because like you guys have said, as soon as you start trying to build it yourself, guess who's responsible? It's not us. It's you, the admin, or whoever actually tried to build it themselves. And yes, there are tools that can help you do that, but at the end of the day, you have now taken ownership of the security, within your virtual four walls. And that's one of the things I really love about Ootbi is we enable you to not have to do that, to not go it alone. We're there, with you as a partner on that front. So that's a huge bonus.
Agreed.
My question would be, why would you want to do that yourself?
Yeah. Listen, there's some super techs out there that are more than capable. Yes.
Oh, yeah.
And they've done it and they can do it and I've seen it and it's locked. I get it. It's just to your point, the amount of time, like this isn't the only thing I have to do. Like there's 100 other things on my plate here. It's not the fact that they can do it. An analogy that I always like to use is I can do most things on my motorcycle. I can change the oil. I can probably do some mass airflow sensors. I can probably do some other. I don't have the time for it. I have 100 other things to do. I want it to have with the set of circumstances that it needs to have, so I can ride it.
Mm-hmm. Totally agree. Well, great conversations all around. I guess we'll go around and do some final takeaways, some final thoughts, and then we'll wrap things up. I'll go first, and then I'll pitch it to you guys. I think the VSA is a fantastic way and opportunity to essentially get your hands on if you're on the fence or if you just kind of want to test things out. But please remember, as I'm sure Ryan and Sterling will both reiterate, it's not for production usage. It's just for testing, because anytime you virtualize any storage, it is vulnerable, whether it's our VSA, somebody else's VSA, somebody's other production solution. If it runs as virtualized storage, there's always that vulnerability at the hypervisor layer that's really tough to prevent against any type of intrusion. So, with that, what do you guys think?
I think that's a really good point. I think there's some things to keep in mind. I think in this day and age where people tell you things are simple, people tell you things, it just works. People say, look how easy this is. We've sort of lost that ability to actually put our hands on solutions, to actually touch something, to see what it looks like, so that you can go back to your C-level and say, no, I've been using this. I've been testing it. It really works. Check this out. For us to be able to have the ability to give it to the techs that really make a difference. And once again, Chris, don't want to make you blush, but Chris is one of the best here. And he's using these solutions, and he doesn't talk, just about anything or, randomly. So it's the fact that this has been proven, it's been out there, and it's here for you to go and test. That's what I think is most special about this. Ryan?
Yeah, I think the takeaway, I just want to kind of refresh, kind of what I talked about prior was, we definitely want to get this VSA out more into the world. But until then, if you want your hands on it, you have an Object First team you can reach out to. More than happy to get you the link to request the VSA. Obviously, there's some things to be approved, but we'd love to have that conversation, to hopefully get it in your hands, test it out. Definitely, from a partner perspective, a Veeam perspective, please jump on it and give us feedback.
Chris, what are your final thoughts?
It's simple. If anybody's like me, I love to get hands-on with stuff. That's how I learn. That's how I do things. That's how I test. If you really want to learn and get a hands-on with Object First, just get the VSA. You'll see how simple it is, how easy it is to set up. It's very simple to connect to Veeam. And that's it.
Love it.
Well
Love it.
said.
It's simple.
Yeah.
It's simple and easy way to learn. And there's not much to learn, right? Because we kept it simple.
No, exactly.
Well,
Some people
Chris,
might say, like, I went into the interface and I'm like, this seems too simple.
Yeah.
Right? That's my first reaction too. Yeah.
Because I'm like, I'm so used to going into ones that are like, oh my God, like, I'll even vCenter for an example. There's so much stuff in vCenter.
Yeah, there's
on the
nothing
interface.
simple about VCSA or any of that stuff.
He's not wrong.
Yeah.
I look at it, again, Chris, like we've all set up NASs. Like, you're the admin. You have to create your storage pool. You've got to create your RAID sets. You've got to pick your stripe sizes. You've got to set up IQNs. There's like a zillion things you've got to do before you can even begin to imagine bringing it into Veeam. Right. So it's like you look at some of this stuff and it's a couple clicks and really, that's it.
30 minutes and you're going.
That's it, man. Well, Chris, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Zero Gravity. We really do appreciate it. And we're lucky to have you as part of the ACES community. So thanks for all you do and contribute there. Sterling and Ryan, as always, great to chat with you guys as well. We are going to take December off for Zero Gravity, but look for a relaunch coming in January and beyond, where we get more on a consistent basis, likely monthly, and we'll be sharing the news with how you can tune in. So until next time, I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of this year, and we'll see you guys in 2025. Thanks again. Take care, everyone.
Thanks.